All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode number 327 of the Restoring Rapport podcast. I'm super excited for the content we got planned out for you guys today, as always. This is a podcast for young believers who are pursuing the goal of marriage and family and trying to get married as young as possible in a healthy way. I'm your host, Seth Hensley. I come on twice a week, every week on Thursday and Sunday to discuss not only the benefits of getting married young, but I try to equip and encourage you in your pursuit of that goal. And today we're going to be reviewing a video on a new bill that has been proposed by the House of Tennessee that would take effect on July 1st of 2025. And this bill is covering an alternate marriage. And it's not an alternate marriage. This is I don't even know what I think about this yet. You're kind of getting my first thoughts on this, but we're going to watch a video giving the rundown of it. But basically what this bill is going to do is it's proposing something called covenant marriage that is required to be between one man and one woman and is entered into with the understanding that it is to last a lifetime, and it would make it harder to get a divorce, and the divorce could only take place under certain circumstances, which so far I have not been able to find what those circumstances would be on the internet, and we're going to go through some sources that I found later on that, but that's what this bill is proposing. And of course, this is, I think, happening out of reactionaryism to the new push for homosexual marriage. And that has happened, I believe, the video that I have for you guys today says it happened in 2015. I wasn't aware of that change in kind of how marriage was being defined. I was kind of aware of how it was being, the definition of marriage was being changed at a social level, because people would refer to what they called gay marriage or homosexual marriage, meaning a marriage between, a man and a man or a woman and a woman. And I knew that was happening at a society level, but I wasn't aware of what the implications of that were at a legislative level. But we're going to go through a video this morning by Michael Knowles entitled, "I Was Right About the Marriage Issue." And he's going to break down a little bit of this issue in about a 5-minute, 50-second video. And then I'm going to go through some sources that I was able to find online about HB House Bill 315, which Tennessee is proposing, that would take effect on July 1st of 2025 if passed. So this is not something that has passed yet, but it's something that's being considered. And of course, my initial thoughts to this bill are, what's the need? Because it's describing what marriage was already supposed to be. Like, just marriage, forget the covenant word, just marriage was supposed to be a covenant between one man and one woman, and has always been that for, a long time. And so I don't know why there's suddenly a need to redefine it if that's always what it's meant to begin with. And then, like, the harder to divorce stuff, like where this new covenant marriage bill is going to make it harder for couples to divorce. It's like, that's already what marriage should have been. So, and I think that's what marriage is. I would want to see what distinctions they're making, between a covenant marriage and a marriage. I want to see those basically lined up. So let's see kind of what Michael Knowles says here, and then we're going to go through some sources ourselves.
Really, really good news and a huge cultural shift going on in my state of Tennessee. Have you heard of covenant marriage? Covenant marriage, you're going to hear about it more and more. There is a bill being proposed in Tennessee that would establish covenant marriage into law. Other states have done this already. It was introduced into the State House here, January 22nd. It would establish covenant marriages in Tennessee as being between, quote, one male and one female who, quote, agree that marriage is a lifelong partnership.
That's already what marriage is, right? So that's what I'm kind of confused on. These distinctions that he's drawing between this Tennessee House Bill 315 and what marriage already is, I think are kind of irrelevant. Like, they're not there. It's describing marriage. So I'm kind of confused, but let's continue to see what the other distinctions are.
Legislation would make it harder for couples who agree to enter into this kind of marriage to get a divorce in the state of Tennessee. And the bill would go into effect July 2025. I love this. The Representative Gino Bulso, who proposed this bill, and Chris Hurt, who originally proposed the bill before passing the sponsorship on, they have my full support. Anything I can do to help them, I'm happy to do. This bill is reality with a few extra steps. That's what covenant marriage is. Covenant marriage is reality with a few extra steps, because what this really is just what everyone understood marriage to be until relatively recently.
Exactly.
Until the Obergefell decision in, what was that, 2015? Everyone, everywhere understood marriage to be the union of a man and a woman. Not because we don't like fellas who have different views and desires. Not because we don't like ladies who have different views and desires. Not because we're phobic or hateful or anything, but just because that's what a marriage is. If marriage is not that, there is no way to identify what distinguishes marriage from any other kind of relationship.
And by the way, I'm just going to pause him for a second here and talk about the Obergefell decision, which he said is when we started to define marriage as potentially a relationship between two individuals of the same sex. That's when he said 2015, which, this is Wikipedia, but it's still saying it's backing him up on this. Obergefell versus Hodges, 576 U.S. 644, 2015. So I guess this was a Supreme Court case? Yeah. A decision of the Supreme Court of the United States, which ruled that the fundamental right to marry is guaranteed to same-sex couples. So that was at the Supreme Court level. Wow, it's crazy that I didn't even know that had happened at the Supreme Court level in 2015. That's wild. So until then, everyone in the entire world had defined marriage as a relationship between one man and one woman that lasted a lifetime, and that was, bound both by God and by the people and by the government and by everyone. And so that's crazy. 2015, that was a big decision. I didn't even know that happened. But let's move on to this video and see kind of if we can get some more details on HB 315, because I don't know. So far my reaction is it's the same thing as marriage. Like, it's not changing anything. It's just it's just adding the word covenant there, which Christians already used, at least socially in my circles, to define a marriage. They would say a marriage is a covenant. And so I'm just kind of confused as to what the differences are. I wish there was like a list of differences and that you could read to see how these two were different. But let's see kind of what else Michael says.
It's not hateful. It's just reality. Okay. And then this isn't just distinguishing covenant marriage from same-sex marriage or something. This goes further. This undoes an error that began really 50, 60 years ago, which is the...
Is he going to talk about the no-fault divorce and the ease at which you can get a divorce in the country today? Because I do think that is a problem. And the Catholic Church, I know Michael Knowles is Catholic. They have a very strong stance on this, and you actually can't get a divorce in the Catholic Church. The only way to, what's the word? I guess annul would be the only word. Annul a pre-existing marriage would be if there was an act of deceit prior to the exchange of vows or something like that. The church would only grant you that as, in very, very, very rare circumstances. So, I mean, I kind of think that Catholics have a better view of marriage than, a lot of Protestants, and it being, something that is, you can't leave. It's extremely hard to leave a marriage in the Catholic Church and they wouldn't even use the phrase leave. It would be to get your marriage annulled. It would be very extremely difficult process, which I think is how marriage should be. Now, of course, the common counter argument to that is, well, what about Seth? What about people who are in abusive marriages, or marriages where there's neglect, or marriages where there's infidelity and unfaithfulness? And I'm just like, okay, you did bring up the big issues there. But like, there are divorces happening today for less reason than that. There are divorces happening today because two people who swore never to leave each other are simply unwilling and don't want to put in the work to solve the problems that they're currently experiencing in that season of the marriage. And so they throw in the towel and quit on a decision that they swore in front of God and people was lifelong. So that's the kind of marriage that's the kind of situation where I'm like, that person should not get a divorce. Like, that's an easy way out for them. I don't think that should be an option. Now, in the cases you brought up, yes, I think there's a lot of nuance there, and I would basically never volunteer any advice there, because that's just so dangerous to give someone advice on whether or not they should stay in that kind of situation, especially where there's those serious things going on, like neglect and emotional abuse and infidelity and cheating and all this stuff. It's muddy water. And so I understand that. I mean, I wouldn't, people that I love, I wouldn't want them to stay in a marriage where they were being abused. I would want that guy to be, there needs to be a ramification, a consequence for those terrible actions. And I would say that really he's the one who has broken the marriage vows. He or she, whoever's doing the abuse, has broken the marriage vows. Before the person who would leave and withdraw from the marriage for a time has, because they're the one that are, essentially becoming the enemy and harming their spouse. But yeah, all that to say, I don't really see what the differences are between this HB 315 Tennessee bill and what marriage already has been understood to be. So I want to see some differences there.
Era of liberalizing divorce. Marriage was understood for all of history, certainly in our civilization, but broadly speaking everywhere, as the union of a man and a woman for life, ordered toward the procreation and education of children, and as a secondary matter, ordered toward the mutual support of the spouses. That sounds like a mouthful. I'll say it one more time. It's the lifelong union of a man and a woman for the purpose of, inclined toward the begetting of children and the educating of children, and also for the mutual support of the husband and wife. That was it. The reason for that is not oppression, and it's not patriarchy, and it's not a heteronormativity, and it's that is the only definition that marriage can have that would permit marriage to exist as a different kind of relationship, as a distinct kind of institution.
I agree with him, because think about this for a second. If you're going to create an alternative to marriage, you need to come up with a different name, because the definition for marriage is taken, right? The definition for marriage is exactly what he said. So if you want to come up with an alternative romantic living or sexual living situation, don't call it marriage. And this is why I kind of respect the cohabiting movement, because it didn't say, well, we're married. It didn't say that. It's like, no, we're just cohabiting. We're shacking up. We're living together. And they didn't label that marriage. And but unfortunately, a lot of people today are labeling homosexual relationships as marriage. And that is what I'm like, and it's not that I have a personal vendetta against people like that or anything like that. I'm just like, we need to come up with a different word for that, because I guess you could say gay marriage is the term or the word for that, and then I would be okay with it. But like, you've got to have your own word. You can't just try and steal the marriage definition, because marriage means something very specific. And it means the union of a man and a woman that lasts a lifetime, where both sides have sworn in front of God and people never to leave each other, and it's been sealed by the government and the church and the hand of God, etc. And so it's and socially, like, if you gave your vows in front of people, so also by society, and so that's what marriage is. That would be, and so I think he's got the right of it there. And if we're gonna make marriage something else, we need to give it a different name, because that's not marriage anymore.
Separate from boyfriend and girlfriend, separate from just ordinary lovers, separate from roommates. It's the only thing that gives marriage a definition.
Yes, exactly.
And there are all sorts of downstream effects of that, especially as pertains to children. But this is really good stuff. And I mention it not just to call attention to a law in Tennessee, but to point out, I was so right, man. I hate to say I told you so, but I was so right. I have said for years, I've long predicted, and I've been called crazy and backward and I don't know, desperate, I guess, for saying marriage is not a lost issue for the right. Marriage is not a lost issue. So many people, so many conservative Republicans, so-called, told me, Michael, give up on the marriage thing. Oh, it's just over, man. Maybe it's better that it's over. It's no big, just give up on it. I said, I can't give up on it because it's reality. And I can't.
See, I can't believe that I didn't know that bill happened, that Supreme Court level decision between, what did he say, Oben something versus Hodges, that made same-sex marriage legal. I did not even know that happened in 2015, which is crazy that I just learned that huge piece of information. But yeah, guys, that's wild. So I can see why he wasn't wanting to give up on that for such a long time. Especially, yeah, it's just, marriage is such a pillar of, life and stability for not only the health of adults, both male and female, but children particularly, who are always generally more speaking, more healthy in every area, socially, physically, where they end up later in life, educationally, in the context of a two-parent healthy marriage, not a cohabiting relationship or a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship or, a gay relationship, as far as the literature I've seen. And so, yeah, it just becomes really important to keep it. We gotta, everything, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but I think everything is becoming less defined and that definitions are being stolen and bent and misused. And it's like definitions are extremely important. They're extremely important. If we make a world where there are no definitions, then it becomes very hard to communicate to anyone effectively. And studies and research can just fly out the window because what they're terming marriage could mean something totally different. And if somebody says I'm married, they could really not be. It's just very, very important to define things because, that's just going to lead to all kinds of confusion. But so far, he hasn't really detailed any ways in which covenant marriage is different to marriage. So let's see if he does that.
Can't lie. That's why I can't give up on it. Okay. Because I can't say with a straight face that we can redefine marriage in any serious way. We just can't. It's just not a thing we can do.
Right.
No offense to anybody, no hatred to anybody. People can live their lives. No one's saying they can't live. But people, you're telling me that we conservatives believe in enduring human nature. We believe in eternal truths, transcendental moral order, that reality reasserts itself in the end. But you're telling me that the fundamental political institution is irretrievably destroyed because some random lawyer on the Supreme Court wrote romantic poetry during a decision in his majority ruling? Are you kidding me? I think that institution is a little more enduring. I think reality is a little more enduring than all that. This is what's happening. You're going to see this in more and more states. You're going to see this in more and more states because it reflects the truth and reality, and people desire that. And even if we're taken to flights of fancy for long periods of time, ultimately, reality is going to kick back in. Hey.
Interesting. Okay, let's look at this bill ourselves here, guys, and just kind of go through it. Tennessee House Bill 315, also known as HB 315, establishes the Tennessee Covenant Marriage Act, which makes it more difficult to get a divorce in Tennessee. That's how it's primarily defined. That's what's in bold on Google. But it says the bill introduced by Representative Chris Hurt and sponsored by Representative Gino Bulso, if passed, would take effect on July 1st, 2025. Here's the source for that. Actually, they give three. It says, what would the bill do? It would allow couples to choose to enter a covenant marriage. See, they're still using this term covenant marriage, which I'm confused about because marriage is and always has been and was a covenant. I think the main distinction they're drawing here is that it's got to be between a man and a woman. This is out of reactionaryism to the Supreme Court. Was it Obergefell versus Hodges? What was that called again? It's Obergefell versus Hodges. That basically said that it was now legal and marriage was defined as what could be a union between two same-sex individuals, and that was in 2015 by the Supreme Court. So I think this is out of reactionaryism to that. But here's why I don't like it. Instead of reclaiming marriage as the definition that it always has been for centuries, we're making a new term when somebody tries to steal our term. It's like, why are we doing that? Like, I don't like that. It says it would allow. Anyway, though, it says the bill would allow couples to enter a covenant marriage, which is a lifelong relationship. That's marriage already was that. Again, requires couple to complete premarital counseling and sign a declaration of intent. Okay, this is something different because to my knowledge, at least in the state of Ohio, you are not, well, I know you're not required to complete premarital counseling because Lainey and I did not do a traditional version of that. We did, we just went to couples who were close to where we wanted to be in 50 years and asked them for marriage advice, which I think is often a better way to go about marriage counseling instead of going to somebody who's seen basically a lot of traumatic couple situations and asking them for advice. I think it's better to go to the person that you would like to be closest to their relationship in 50 years. Like that's a good, basically ask the person who is currently where you want to be for directions, just that logic. And don't ask anybody who is somewhere where you do not want to be for marriage advice. But it outlines the grounds for divorce and legal separation for covenant marriages. So what are those? Let's look at some of those because I'm curious about. It says Tennessee House Bill 315, marriage as introduced, enacts the Tennessee Covenant Marriage Act to create covenant marriage which is entered into by one male and one female. I think that's the primary difference. But again, that's what marriage meant up until 2015 to everyone universally. And if you were in a homosexual attracted relationship, then you would term that simply that, a homosexual relationship. You wouldn't term it a marriage. And that's what I'm kind of reacting to, is like we should have kept definitions straight, because when you start blending definitions and stuff, things get really, really messy, and it's kind of harder to communicate basically with everyone. But it says that the male and female must understand and agree that marriage is a lifelong relationship and permits a spouse in a covenant marriage to obtain a judgment of divorce under certain circumstances. So this again could be a way in which covenant marriage is different from marriage in this country. But yeah, this is really interesting. This is the latest action that's been taken on this bill, and it was sponsored by Gino Bulso. Interesting, guys. It seems so much like marriage. I don't really see. I think that what the main difference between these two is that it is trying to reclaim the idea that marriage is between one man and one woman, because all the other descriptions of it are exactly in alignment with marriage. And again, marriage itself meant that until, just a few years ago, like 10 years ago. It's crazy that 2015 was 10 years ago, by the way. It's just wild. I remember 2015 like really well. It's crazy. What are the requirements for covenant marriage? Here are the things that are required to get a covenant marriage, or would be required to get a covenant marriage if this bill passes and goes into effect on July 1st of 2025. It said couples must be of legal age. So that is also, I believe, a distinction between marriage now in at least the state of Ohio where I live, because you can get married at 17, which is 1 year younger than the legal age of adulthood, but you have to have a parental consent there in order for that marriage to proceed. At least that's my general understanding of it right now. So I think that would be another difference between marriage and covenant marriage. It said couples must complete premarital counseling. That's definitely a distinction. Couples must sign a declaration of intent on their marriage license application. Again, that's what a marriage application is a declaration of intent to spend the rest of your life with everyone, and it's witnessed by other people, it's witnessed by God, it's witnessed by the government, it's witnessed by everyone. And so I don't know, that seems exactly like marriage already to me. It says couples must file the declaration of intent and marriage license application with the county clerk. That is, you already have to do that for marriage. Look, that's what Lainey and I did. That's what everybody in my area has to do when you get married. Go to the courthouse, talk to the clerk there at the probate court, and file your marriage license application. They'll give you the certificate, which then is signed by the person who officiates the wedding, and then that person takes it back to the courthouse, and it's filed there, and you're married. That's my understanding of how it works so far. And again, the way they're describing is exactly like the way they're describing covenant marriage is exactly like what marriage already is today. So I guess kind of just the theme that I'm wanting you guys to see throughout this episode is that this new bill, this House Bill 315 that the Tennessee House has proposed and would go into effect on July 1st, 2025, is exactly what marriage was until 2015, 10 years ago, when Obergefell versus Hodges was ruled by the Supreme Court as it is making it possible for individuals of the same sex to get married. And so I think, that's where all the crazy started. Because what we should have done there, in my opinion, was we should have protected the definition. We should have had separate definitions for these different types of living situations, so that it makes it possible for people to not only communicate better, but for us to measure what actually produced the best results. And not just anecdotal evidence, but I'm talking like empirical number-based evidence for which living situation, which romantic or sexual relationship living situation works better. Not only for the individuals, the adults involved in those relationships, but for their children. What actually works better? and produces the more desirable results. Because again, as a Christian, I think, and I'm not trying to be hateful to anyone of a different opinion than myself here, but I do want to share my opinion for the benefit of those who would benefit from it. I think that, God's design for marriage being between one man and one woman is and always will be what produces the best results for not only the people involved in the relationship, again, but for children, the offspring of that relationship. So thanks for listening today, guys. Basically, I want you to just get this idea today. If you can take anything away from this video and this podcast, I need it to be that basically there's not many differences between this House Bill 315 that is being proposed by the Tennessee House for covenant marriage, and there's not many differences between that and what marriage is and always has been understood to be until 2015. It's basically the same thing with a couple exceptions. That being what I can see so far. Those being what I can see so far to be the couples must be of legal age in the covenant marriage, which is not true of marriage, at least in the state of Ohio. You can get a parental consent to get married at the age of 17 instead of 18. Couples must complete premarital counseling, which is also not required in the state of Ohio, as far as I know. Actually, I know it's not because Lainey and I did not do that, as I said, and we got married in Lawrence County, Ohio in 2023, actually. Yep, 2023. And it says couples must, the rest is the same. So those are the two, and it must be between one man and one woman in a covenant marriage. Okay, so those are basically the difference. Again, to highlight those three differences, the differences between covenant marriage, the bill being proposed by the Tennessee House, and marriage, as it was understood until 2015. Actually, even today, the only differences are that couples must be of legal age in the covenant marriage. They must complete premarital counseling under the covenant marriage bill, and they must be of differing sexes in the covenant marriage bill. And so, I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. I hope it's been informative. If it has, reach out and let me know what you thought of the episode through the link in the show notes. Give me your personal opinion on this. What do you think is actually good, especially in the YouTube comments right now? Give me a comment. Do you think this is a good thing for Tennessee to pass? Do you see a distinction between covenant marriage and marriage that I am not seeing now, or any other distinctions that I have not seen? And do you think that this is necessary? Do you think this is a good move? Do you think that we should basically create a new definition of what we mean by marriage? Or do you think we should fight to reclaim what has already been, known as marriage for hundreds of years? Let me know in the comments what you think. Thanks for listening today, guys. Reach out and let me know what you thought of the episode through the link in the show notes. You can also, you can't send that link in the show notes anymore. Just go to Instagram and Facebook and private message me or send me a audio voice message. Would love to hear that. Make me feel super connected to you as an audience member, and it would make the podcasting system two-way. Thanks for listening today, guys, and I will talk to you next time.